Ask every time you go to church, ask your local priest, put him on the spot, ask him when we're going to find out about the secret deal with the Chinese. And let's make the church come clean, because they have to come clean at some point. They're not getting any money from us. It's got to be coming from somewhere. Fuji can't pay for every piece of art in the Vatican. So my guess is that the communist Chinese have pushed billions of dollars into the hands of the Vatican over the last several years to get this deal done. Otherwise, why the secrecy?
We've got some incredible news to go over this week at Faith and Reason. First of all, we're here in a full house. We have Jack Maxey, we have Father Altman, we have Liz Yor, but amazing stuff going on. Listen, they've been debanked. Kanye, as well as a religious freedom charity, have been debanked by JP Morgan Chase. But there's good news as well. Cardinal Müller went to visit the Haug family. Cardinal Müller spoke on EWTN with LifeSite News, and just the comments are astounding. Also, Bishop Schneider is also in America, and he's given incredible interviews. I'm going to actually speak to him later this week as well. But he was with Mother Miriam with some astounding comments. He was also on War Room with Steve Bannon. One of the most amazing things about all this is it's really the church interacting with the state. No separation of church and state. Oh no, these churchmen have come forward to confront the state in its abhorrent treatment of Catholics and Christians. And wait till you see how they do that. This is Faith and Reason. Stay tuned. So good to be with you all once again. Father, if you can lead us off with a prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, in your great commission, you told the apostles, Jesus told your apostles, to go forth to all nations, all people, all time, and preach the truth, the deposit of faith. Let us follow in their footsteps on this, the Feast of the North American Martyrs, who died doing just exactly what Jesus told them to do, spread the truth of the gospel. Let us follow in their footsteps and honor them on their feast day by spreading your truth right here, right now, this day. We ask for your blessing and the grace to do so in the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
So last week we were talking about Kanye West and his Pope John Paul II shirt, which of course the company is now refusing to print for him. It says White Lives Matter on the back. It was a very strong interview with Tucker about being pro-life and so on. But we just learned that he's been canceled by his bank, JP Morgan Chase. Also, a religious freedom charity also been canceled by the same bank. Liz, give us the details, if you will.
After he went on Tucker and received all that attention, Kanye West was notified that his bank, the JP Morgan Chase Bank, where he has a significant account of millions of dollars, was going to debank him, close his account. And also, it's called the National Committee for Religious Freedom, was also notified by JP Morgan Chase that they were going to be banked. So we see the pattern. First, they censor you, then they ramp up to destroy you in the media, demoralize you, debank you, and deplatform you. That is the pattern of a totalitarian left. Coming after pro-lifers, coming after Christians, coming after anybody who speaks against their narratives, such as the vax narrative. And so they're pulling all the levers. And in fact, it makes the PayPal action look like child's play. People can go elsewhere besides PayPal, but when they close down your bank for exercising your First Amendment right of free speech, then we know that this is being ramped up to a degree where we are seeing the persecution of Christians, pro-lifers, and the really marginalization of free speech in America.
We watched this happen with Trump first, then with the truckers as well in Canada. Jack, what's your take on this absolute attack on freedom?
Well, I think this is one of those situations where it highlights the failure of oversight in the part of the U.S. Senate Banking Committee and the same in the House. They are the ones who are responsible for regulating these organizations. So long as these banks receive even one iota of federal assistance, they are allowed to use the federal wires. They are allowed to borrow from the Fed. As long as they're able to do that, I don't see in any way that they can be able to use the authority of their business to make determinations about what people are doing, so long as the behavior is constitutionally protected behavior. Someone made a perfect point yesterday in an article where they said, where does Louis Farrakhan do his banking? So maybe with the new House in Congress, we'll clean that up and we'll have the federal government punish these banks who are violating people's constitutional rights.
Father, your take on it.
A private enterprise cannot discriminate against your constitutional rights. The Senate and the House can investigate all this all they want, but until the Department of Justice does something about it, we're dead in the water. And of course, the Department of Justice has been peopled by Obama and Biden. And the rhino that is, what's his name there? Mitch something down in Tennessee or something like that. He's a senator. Mitch McConnell. He did not give Trump a single recess to appoint people and replace those Obamaites, those communist Obamaites that are in such places as the Department of Justice. And so they still run the deep state. There's going to be no enforcement of this unless there's some private lawsuit. Who's going to fund that? Who's going to prosecute? Who's going to take that through the system? The amount of money when you're going up against the whole weight of the Department of Justice, the U.S. government, and J.P. Morgan, you don't get deeper pockets than that. So who will take them on? I don't know. But that's the only way it's going to be resolved. Because you cannot expect the governmental regulatory agencies or the prosecutorial arm, such as the Department of Justice, to do anything because they are full on board with this communist takeover of our country.
Well, there's some interesting developments from the states. In Missouri, the Missouri State Treasurer, as well as the Attorney General, approached JP Morgan Chase and said, we do business with you. We have millions, billions in your bank. We do not like the way that you are treating our state citizens. And so if you don't stop this behavior, we're going to pull our funds. So I think there's some using the marketplace, as it has been done before, to start putting pressure on these major institutions through the state attorney generals, through the state treasurers. But the good news is, let's not forget the good news. In the first 100 days after Roe was reversed, 66 abortion facilities across the country have stopped doing abortions. And 14 out of 50 states currently ban abortion. And that abortion ban will soon be up to 26 states. So there's progress being made. The left is not going to lay down, but I think we need to, rely on the states and on private causes of action, as Father and Jack point out, to really start holding these big corporations accountable.
This week, we just had Cardinal Müller in America, as well as Bishop Schneider in America, but Cardinal Müller went to visit with the family of Mark Houck. The Cardinal is standing there with the family around. He calls out the American government for daring to persecute this awesome family.
Isn't it interesting, the movement of the Lord? We have to have a German cardinal come to the United States to protest the behavior against a good, holy man like Mark Houck and his family. But nevertheless, Cardinal Müller, as everyone knows, the former head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith. And this is what he said to cameras when he was standing out in front of Mark Houck's house with his beautiful family. Cardinal Müller said this: persecution of the good people is always a sign of the beginning of dictatorship and tyranny. We see this in all of the world, but especially in the beginning with Herod in the New Testament. Democracy does not work when there is no respect for basic rights of life and personal integrity of your body and your liberty. The administration and government of democratic states have to serve the people and not the other way around. He also said, this is not acceptable. This is a scandal, and they are making America ridiculous in the eyes of society. What a throwdown, and how brave and bold and honest to provide that kind of support to the Hauck family, coming from a German cardinal.
Father, I'm going to start with you because I'd love to hear your take on this. Is the church in all her glory. There's a cardinal of the Catholic Church really telling America, shame on you for going after this heroic American family.
Yes. Well, and you know, they did it a week or two later with that father of 11 down in, I think it was in Tennessee. So I have to ask myself, well, where is Cardinal Supich? Hey, Blaze, nothing but crickets. Cardinal Dolan, maybe you should back away from the trough, as I've said before, Cardinal Dolan. Let some blood get to your brain and realize you're supposed to defend that family. How about Cardinal Wilton Gregory? What's he up to? He's out there where he could have the ear of the politicians. Did he say anything at all? How about Cardinal O'Malley, Cardinal DiNardo? Or how about Bergoglio's newest buddy, Cardinal McElroy? Did any of them say anything? Did they stand up in one voice and say, you will never persecute an American Catholic like that, or an American Christian? Did they say anything? What brood of vipers do we have in our own American hierarchy that we have to have a German? By the way, he's hated over there by the other German cardinals and bishops because he is Catholic. We're not hearing anything from our own hierarchy. Well, you know how I feel about them, John Henry. I don't need to restate it. But why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't any honest Catholic say, we feel betrayed, we feel abandoned, we feel as if they have not got our backs, though we have one job to do, and they're not doing it. Is there any wonder why Catholics leave the Catholic Church? Because if Cardinal Supich, if Cardinal Dolan, if Cardinal Gregory, if Cardinal O'Malley, if Cardinal DiNardo, if Cardinal McElroy, if that's what it means to be Catholic, I don't want any part of it. That's what they're thinking. They don't want to be part of that filthy brood of vipers who have each other's backs, and you know all about the cover-up. We've got 5 billion reasons not to want a part of the Catholic Church because of those guys. So where are they, John Henry? Where are they? We've been betrayed and we've been abandoned. And you know what? The people know it.
There are 2 bishops who have spoken out. I'm going to show briefly clips from Bishop Strickland, who on the Bishop Strickland Show, which we are on LifeSite News, as well as Bishop Coffey. Bishop Coffey actually was an old friend of Mark Hauck's, and he gives testimony to the man. Take a look.
The circumstances behind it are really sinister. The case had already been dismissed.
That's right.
I think more than once.
Yep.
And they were contacted to say, well, we've got more questions or whatever. They were cooperative. And then the next thing you know, this raid that is an atrocity.
Yeah,
it's not America.
No.
And it's like, what in the world is the basis for this?
I can vouch for him. I know people watching this all over the country and all over the world may not know Mark. They know the story and they want to help, but I can vouch for his character, the kind of man he is. He's an incredible guy. He's incredibly compassionate and motivated and dedicated and heroic and courageous. I've known Mark for these over 3 decades. I have great respect for him. He's a tough guy. I know he played football in college, and I know he's worried about his wife and children. What I can say with great sincerity is that they picked the wrong guy to mess with.
They picked on the wrong guy to mess with. I love that quote coming from Bishop Coffey, and I'm sure that his verbal support of Mark Hauck was of great comfort to him, and even Bishop Strickland, who said, you know, this conduct is way out of bounds. And I think it's important to remember Strickland is speaking out, and he said it doesn't even sound like this is America anymore. And this man, Mark Hauck, he said, is putting his life on the line for the pro-life community and for children who are unborn. So I guess we have to just take those bishops who are going to step up. You know, when we see laity like a Mark Hauck stepping up, a great Catholic father who's been in the battle at the abortion mills for all these years, and then his treatment, he really did kind of force the bishops and cardinals to come out and defend him, because he is such a brave witness to the faith. And this is what being a Catholic is all about. And so, in this sense, it appears that the laity are leading the way. And so I think this is really a great moment. I think we should celebrate the bishops and cardinals who've been coming out to support him, and keep our own prayers and support for Mark and his family and the other pro-lifers that are under persecution by our own government.
You said our own bishops and cardinals who supported them. There are about 290 active bishops in this country, including the cardinals. We've just delineated 2. And if there had been a 3rd, we would have heard about it. The fact of the matter is that Bishop Coffey, Bishop Strickland, they stand alone. And the rest of these losers, the rest of these vipers aren't saying anything. Again, as I said before, they betrayed us and they have abandoned us. Here's what people need to do. We could get frustrated. We could talk about all the time, but here's how you can fix this problem. Quit giving them a single penny and divert the entirety of your support to the Alliance Defending Freedom, to Judicial Watch, to the Thomas More Society. Give 100% of your money to them, because Thomas More will have your back. Support them, and then watch. When they have the funds to do it, they will take on these giants and they will take them down. And in the meantime, also pray for God to smite our enemies, especially those in the church. People get upset with that. Well, throughout salvation history, Almighty God has indeed smote his enemies. And it is not an improper prayer to beg him, to implore him to smite our enemies in this day. And that includes those monsters and miters. So divert your money not to them, but to Thomas More Society, and then pray to God properly that he smite these bad guys who are putting us all, our faith and freedom, at absolute risk.
And I would add LifeSite News, who provides a platform and a voice, not only of the pro-life information and news, but news around the world affecting the Catholic Church. Without LifeSite News, we would be in the dark.
Just a quick note before we return. If you would like to stay up to date on LifeSite's coverage of the latest life, family, and culture news, subscribe to one of our many newsletters by going to lifesitenews.com/subscribe. And if you'd like to help us bring our truth-telling coverage to millions around the world, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation at give.lifesitenews.com. And now, back to the video. If anyone wants to help directly, you can actually help. There's a life funder that we set up. So Mark Houck and his family are set up with a Give, Send, Go campaign. Hundreds of thousands have come in there, thanks be to God, for their defense. But there were, I think everybody knows, we mentioned last time, there were another 11 people indicted in Tennessee, and they went after them as well, just like they did with Mark Houck. Not with so many officers, but also FBI agents with guns drawn. One example was Paul Vaughn, this father of 11 that we talked about last time. Absolutely horrific stuff. Well, he and the other defendants, the other of the 11 indicted there in Tennessee, we've set up a life funder for them. So if you go to lifefunder.com, you'll be able to support their cause in defending themselves against this ridiculous indictment, and really to call attention to the horror of the FBI going to, like a Gestapo force by the Biden administration, enforce their pro-abortion views. Cardinal Müller's interview at LifeSite News, really smashing stuff. He was also on EWTN with Raymond Arroyo. Give us a couple highlights from that, if you would, Liz.
The cardinals and bishops who come to the United States, put powder in their guns, are ready to fire away because I believe they think that and believe that American Catholics still have their freedom of speech and are bold, as well as many of the priests here, present company included. And so they feel that they're in good company. So what actually Cardinal Gerhard Müller said to Raymond, and then he repeated it in a very interesting interview with Jim Hale on LifeSite News. He said that the 2023 Synod, the Synod on Synodality, is shaping up into a hostile takeover of the church. If they succeed, it will be the end of the Catholic Church. Cardinal Müller, I think, is clearly, and throughout that interview with Jim and with Raymond, trying to focus the attention of what's going on in the Synod, what's going to be happening at the Synod on Synodality. I'm getting the Catholic population to start paying attention to it. In my mind, after studying the documents, the preparatory documents, Pope Francis's mission statement with respect to the Synod on Synodality, the reports that are coming in from Germany and Belgium and the Netherlands, which are very, very troubling, toppling Catholic dogma. I think this is, for people, if they don't understand what a synod is, this is the great reset of the Catholic Church. I think that's what's going to be happening both in October of 2023 and October of 2024. Pope Francis announced this week that he was extending it another year. That gives us, the laity, a chance to really pay attention, get involved, and start speaking out and up about really the abomination, the corruption of this process, and what are, I think, going to be some heresy, apostasy that is clearly coming out of the Synod. And I think that is what is intended to be. That's been the strategy all along.
Jack, I'd love to hear your take. Cardinal Müller comes all the way from Rome, and after being kicked out of the CDF himself, and here he is, though still speaking strongly. And really, what do the laity take away from this as they see this Cardinal of the Church calling out the leadership of his own church and the danger that we're experiencing in the trying to undo doctrine?
As Americans, we have personal historical experience with the way I think this should be handled. And I would say no taxation without representation, stop all the tithing, send your weekly check to Mother Miriam. Don't give it out. Let these people know that they survive because we support them. And if they no longer have the support of their flock, then, what do they have? I don't think that we need to have a schism. I don't think that we need to reject the whole church. I just think, just the same way I feel about America. I don't think we need a civil war. I think we need the Constitution needs to just be followed. The same way with the Catechism. It can't be rewritten every other way without the representation of the people in the case of the Constitution, and without representing the values of the laity in terms of what this synod is all about. So make yourselves be heard. Don't be afraid. And I very much agree that if they are pushing illegitimate doctrine, then that's just what it is. It undermines them only. You have to live in the faith that you were brought up in. And there's no reason that you need to change. There's no reason that you should feel in any way separate from the holy written words, particularly in the Latin Mass. And I say the best way to fight back is with our rosary and with prayer. We've already been told that it's going to require a miracle to change things. Well, the miracle comes from all of us going to our knees and begging for one. And I think one will come. I feel confident. Our mother has never let us down before.
Amen to that. I was just on a show with a very holy priest promoting the scapular, reminding us that Our Lady of Fatima said, with the rosary and the scapular, she will save the world. Father, I was given an interesting idea last time. I'd love your take on it again, because again, we're presented with the bishops being unfaithful and the faithful themselves going, what do we do? What do we do? And yes, we are going to be praying our rosaries, wearing our scapulars, and engaging in the spiritual battle, which I think is the main battle. Yes, I think many of the faithful are now going to start tithing elsewhere, recognizing their own responsibility to not support the monstrosity that things are becoming. But in addition, there was a priest at the Catholic Identity Conference who mentioned, what about going to the bishops, showing up where they are and speaking out to them, hounding them, if you will, the way you would a politician. What would you make of such an approach?
Even giving money to places like you, to Mother Miriam, to St. Thomas More Society, even doing that doesn't really get their attention, because all they're going to do is they're going to close some other churches, sell them off, and still live high on the hog in their earthly temporal days. But the one thing that they cannot stand is bad press. And if you actually do get Catholics to speak up and speak out in a very public way, to shame them for their God-forsaken errors, then I think they'll take notice. And I think if you take down one, the rest will say, and then say, who's next? The rest will finally straighten up and realize they're next in the crosshairs. Here's an example. So remember I told you I was down in Peoria, and that bishop, the spawn of, I think, Bernardine and Supich, locked 650 rosary praying Catholics out of the cathedral and out of every church in his diocese. What would be nice is if those 650 people and every other truly faithful Catholic suddenly descended out, because I know exactly where it's right next to the cathedral, his little rectory there, descend upon that and demand his mitre on a platter and don't leave until they do get it. And I'll tell you, the police in Peoria are wonderful people. They protected us on our Rosary March. I have nothing but praise for the people and the chief of police in Peoria, Illinois. You go down there as Catholics, or like the truckers did in Ottawa, but look what your guy up there did, right? No, you descend upon that and demand and don't leave until his mitre is on a platter. He's forced to resign and then say, you're next, Cardinal, because that is the one thing they cannot stand. And when you find out that you're divisive and you're ineffective as a bishop and you get taken down, then they will finally listen. But until at least one goes, nothing. Except for a divine miracle, which of course we can pray for. We can pray that God smite his enemies right up to and including Jorge Bergoglio. Smite that apostate. And he will answer some way, somehow. We just don't know how. And I for one, am impatient. But you said, well, what can you do? Can you go and complain to these bishops? Yes, the entire country a faithful Catholic should descend upon that viper in Peoria, take him down, get rid of his mitre. They'll have to remove him, because you cannot have that kind of an uproar. They'll have to remove him. But where will you get enough Catholics to go and gather? Or are they going to sit back and do nothing? Because remember, silence in the face of evil is evil itself. All it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. How about we finally get a march for the deposit of faith? Because that's what they're attacking ultimately. You saw it, you just reeled off a few examples of what they're doing in New Zealand. In New Zealand now, they're trying in their little synod down there to rewrite the catechism and allow all blessings like Belgium did and like Germany and Austria doing. What they did since Vatican II, which was a Trojan horse. I heard it explained this way. Since that Trojan horse of Vatican II allowed them to infiltrate and destroy, recavate the sanctuary and the holy sacrifice of the Mass, they're now this whole synod thing is another Trojan horse where they're trying to destroy. Oh, it seems really nice. But when they let loose, when they open up the bottom of that horse and the evil comes out of it, as they're trying to do, watch out. No, of course, God's going to save his faithful church, as he always said would happen. He promised that the gates of hell will not prevail against it. But if we sit back and do nothing as useless Catholics, well, then we get what we deserve.
There was a group of young Irish from Ireland, traditional Catholics, who attended a synod, listening session, questionnaire, survey. This group of Irish Catholics, young people, is growing in leaps and bounds in Ireland. They gave their presentation to the bishops, and when the bishops issued their report to the Vatican, it did not include, this growing support and love of the traditional Latin Mass. And so what did the young people do? They protested. They sent a letter to the Vatican. They had a press conference. They've had enormous publicity surrounding how they feel that this process of the synod, and this is important for people to remember because it's happening all over the world. They feel that this is a manipulated process of questionnaires, listening sessions with the express purpose of getting a designated outcome, which is Francis's outcome, which does not have a love of the Latin Mass. It has a suppression of the Latin Mass, and it is in fact picking and choosing winners. And dare I say, this is once again a rigged election. This is a global focus group, which is masquerading as a fair listening session. I like the fact that the young people did not sit back and allow this manipulation to take place, how they were absolutely excised out of the report. And they just fought back using the media, and I'm sure they will continue to do so. I love that kind of action on the part of the laity. I think we have to do more of it, to Father's point. And also, I think we need to remember, there was an article this morning in the UK Daily Mail that Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, worth 100+ billion, was at the Vatican receiving the philanthropy award, the Galileo Philanthropy Award. And now if you just look at all the things that he supports, many are non-Catholic. He's also a big supporter of climate change, which I suspect that's why Francis is giving him this award. Don't forget, Linda Rothschild is working in a partnership with the Vatican. So as we withdraw our money, it appears that the Bergoglio Vatican seems to embrace the wealthy global elite. And I'm not so naive to think that they're not giving massive donations to the Vatican Bank. Perhaps that's why the Vatican Bank is consolidating all of its funds. So to Father's point, to Jack's point, we need to pray and we need to be active. And I love just taking an example from the young people of Ireland. We got to do that all around the world, no matter what happens. Got to continue to protest.
You know, Liz, one of the things you said about the young people that I find very encouraging, both in the church and in the secular world, it is the young people who are fed up by these progressive changes that they've witnessed from their birth to the present day. And it is they who are feeling left behind by this special interest group of the whole world. And it's they who elected the right-wing government in Italy. It's they who elected the right-wing government in Sweden. It is they who are likely going to topple governments across Western Europe in the coming year or so. And so I do think that there is a growing acknowledgement amongst young people, both in our church and on the secular level, that we're not a rules-based society anymore. They realize that they're kind of being scammed and grifted here, and they're not going to put up with it. And God bless them, both in the political sphere and in the spiritual one.
One of the things that is very astounding about this past week, was Bishop Schneider's tour. He of course was at the Catholic Identity Conference where I was speaking as well, but he went on from there and has done some incredible interviews. He was with our own Mother Miriam and said some astounding things. She asked a really hard question about what do we do with Pope Francis. He was also on War Room with Steve Bannon and talked about Vatican Council II, about communism, about the treatment of cardinals, and just astounding stuff in more clarity than we've ever heard before. Liz, if you can give us some details, and we'd like to show a couple of clips.
Sure. I was very touched by his comments that Cardinal Zen has been abandoned by the Pope. And the silence over Zen, Schneider said, will go down in church history as a stain, a grievous omission. Zen has served the church faithfully and spoke courageously of true freedom and faith. And you could see on his face that he was very, very troubled by what has been done to not only Cardinal Zen, the underground church, but also Hong Kong. And he claimed that obviously the government persecution of Christians and Catholics and crimes against humanity is ongoing in China. And the Vatican, this is what was so brilliant. The Vatican sign of weakness, he said, is to try and please the world, those that are powerful. And he said the Pope likes to please the powerful. And this is a weakness of the Vatican. And the true Catholic attitude is not to please the world, but to be courageous. And he really condemned what he called the servile attitude of the Vatican, which he called a sign of weakness.
This is for me, at the contrary, a weakness of the Vatican. The contrary, the true Catholic attitude, which should be, as the successors of the apostles, to be courageous in front of the powerful of this world. And these were the Christians in the first centuries, the popes of the first centuries. They were courageous. They were not afraid of the Roman pagan emperors. And so the other examples in history, we know the glorious, heroic attitude of popes who resisted even Christian emperors who were abusing their power. And this is a glory for the Catholic Church. But today, this sometimes servile attitude of the Vatican administration towards those who are powerful currently, it is a sign of weakness, and it's not a true attitude which should be the successor of St. Peter and the other apostles.
Jack, I would love your take on this, because he's talking about the church confronting the world and not being afraid, the way they were, not afraid in the early days of the church, when the Pope went up against the Holy Roman Emperor and didn't care. He didn't care if he lost his life or not. Would love to hear your take on the courage that's needed from church leaders to confront the world.
I think that there is a lot for courage that needs to be done. And I think that Cardinal Zen is a tremendous example of what it means to be a man of faith and to have courage. I've said this many times, especially concerning this new synod that they want to have. 0 agreements. We accept nothing until they reveal the secret deal that they made with the communist Chinese, because it must have some power over Bergoglio if he is willing to turn his back on Cardinal Zen, right? The Chinese must have some incredible power for the Vatican to remain silent while literally a living holy man is abused by the communist Chinese in Hong Kong. So I think one of the most powerful things that we can all do, along with prayer, and have this in our intentions, and ask every time you go to church, ask your local priest, put him on the spot, ask him when we're going to find out about the secret deal with the Chinese. And let's make the church come clean, because they have to come clean at some point. They're not getting any money from us. It's got to be coming from somewhere. Fuji can't pay for every piece of art in the Vatican. So my guess is that the communist Chinese have pushed billions of dollars into the hands of the Vatican over the last several years to get this deal done. Otherwise, why the secrecy? It would be something that you would be superiorly proud of, to reveal how you created, public acknowledgement of the Catholic Church, and it took 150 million spiritual Catholics who've been underground for 80 years out into the light. No, I think that this is key. We need to know what the China deal was, just like we need to know what China Joe has done with the American national security with the communist Chinese. We need to know what China Francis has done with the Catholic Church and the betrayal of our liturgy, and the betrayal, literally, of a giant population of Catholics who have lived in the faith for 80 years of torture and murder. What is in the deal, Pope?
Bishop Schneider gave an incredible comparison in his interview on War Room with Bannon. He talked about Ostpolitik, the deal made back in the 60s before the Second Vatican Council, that basically was also an agreement with communism to shut up about it. He described how harmful that was then, because he himself, Bishop Schneider, that is, lived through that with his family, and the problems that came from it, and therefore the Second Vatican Council was truly fascinating. We're going to watch a short clip of that. And Father, then it'll be over to you for last word.
And we saw this in the communist time, where that they were put on in leadership in the church, bishops, people, weak clerics, who were basically in some way collaborators with the ruling communist system, or completely weak persons who did not resist the atheism, the communism. And so this is a continuation of these politics brought to its logical end. To do such agreement with a government, which is today China, which so obviously in a criminal way persecutes Catholics and other Christians and tramples the basic rights of human dignity, I think it is very grievous, and we have to regret this, and the Holy See should not do this.
And so, Father, I'd love to hear from you that tie that goes back to Ostpolitik, what that was all about, and its relation to what we're experiencing right now.
Sure. You can fact check me on this, but I thought I just read today where that secret deal was finally signed today. So it's been re-upped. It's no longer just the deal that's still waiting to be renewed. It has been renewed. Of course, all without any observation on our part about the contents of that deal. And I recollect back to in World War II when the Catholic Church in Germany said, no, it's not possible for Germans, the Nazis, to get involved in the administration or the appointment of bishops. And yet the exact opposite now has happened under Bergoglio. It's so consistent with what's happened to Cardinal Zen and how he has been abandoned and betrayed. And I'm sure in his mind, he realizes he's a martyr. And it's white right now, but it likely will be red in some form in the future. I recall John the Baptist and how the Sanhedrin abandoned. No, not one of the Sanhedrin spoke up. I think I talked about this before. Spoke up when Herod arrested John the Baptist. And not one of the Sanhedrin threatened Herod with expulsion and eternal damnation for his mistreatment of the world's greatest man ever born of woman, according to Jesus. And then, of course, then Herod executes him again. Not one word. Why do we think that Bergoglio and his boys and these deals with the Chinese communists are any different than the deals that the Jews had back then with King Herod and who didn't call the Sanhedrin when they didn't call him out? I'm not expecting anything out of Rome except a continuation of the same policies which have haunted the faithful who suffer under them since the days of Sanhedrin. Like, for instance, with the Johnson Amendment, we were just talking about that in the U.S. government. I think it was 1954 when Lyndon Baines Johnson got all upset that there was they weren't even Catholic churches. It was like some Protestant groups or some nonprofits. And he had this amendment come in. I think it's called the Johnson Amendment by name, where if you spoke up, you would lose your tax exempt status. So the government, in that fell swoop, which nobody argued, nobody fought against and put up with to this day, in that one, they've silenced the church. And that's why nobody's speaking up now. But that's why nobody will speak up for Cardinal Zen right now. Because if what you're saying is true, and I've no reason to doubt it, follow the money. They're a little worried about the money. Why did Francis take in all the accounts to the Vatican Bank? Because they can no longer be tracked, nor can those assets be frozen due to their malfeasance. So, what we're seeing is the takeover of the church by these radical left-wing communists, and only a miracle is going to help us now. Glory be to God, He's going to give us one, because He will never, unlike the bishops, our Father in heaven will never abandon His children, and we just have to live with that confidence, absolute confidence that He will come to our aid.
And He does come to our aid already in Cardinals Müller, Bishop Schneider, in you, Father, also in you, Liz and Jack.
Cardinal Zen returns back to the show trial on October 26th. Obviously, this was all orchestrated because the agreement was signed before he returns to trial. He could face life imprisonment. And so ask our Catholic faithful and Christians around the world to pray for him during this real persecution, and that he doesn't have the support of the powerful Vatican City State, the Holy See, in his corner as he takes on the diabolical evil CCP.
We shall indeed pray for Cardinal Zen. Thanks to all of you. We'll see you next time on Faith and Reason. Hi everyone, this is John Henry Weston. We hope you enjoyed this video, and to see more like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button below to get all the latest content from LifeSite News. So check out our links in the description to read more, sign up for our newsletter, and connect with us on social media so that you can stay up to date with all of the latest life, family, and culture news. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.